What would you do if you opened your mail and discovered someone had forged your signature to steal $8 million worth of stock? I'm Raymond Ray Caldwell, and that's exactly what happened when I found a transfer confirmation for 120,000 shares of Quantum Dynamics in my brokerage statement. The signature was perfect, every curve and loop identical to my real autograph. Someone had practiced this carefully, but who would have access to samples of my signature? And who knew about my valuable stock holdings? The answer broke my heart. The transfer had been processed through my stepdaughter Sophia, the brilliant young woman I'd helped raise since she was 12. The woman I'd trusted like my own blood had stolen from me with nothing but forged ink on paper. You're watching Betrayal HQ, where corporate crime meets family justice. If you're new here, we share the real stories of financial fraud exposed and white-collar criminals brought down, straight from those who fought back. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell, because Ray's response will teach every corporate predator watching to think twice before stealing from the wrong person. But I had something Sophia and her criminal fiancé didn't know about. A single phantom share that could trigger the nuclear option and destroy their entire company. What happened next became a masterclass in strategic corporate revenge that ended with federal prison sentences and a foundation that now protects other victims. This is my story. I opened the routine envelope from my brokerage that Tuesday morning, expecting the usual quarterly report. Instead, I found something that made my blood run cold. A transfer confirmation for 120,000 Class A shares of Quantum Dynamics. My signature was there, crisp and perfect, authorizing the movement of nearly $8 million worth of stock. The problem was simple. I had never signed that document. I stared at the paperwork, my hands trembling slightly. The signature was flawless, every curve and loop identical to my real autograph. Someone had practiced this carefully, spending time perfecting my writing style. But who would have access to samples of my signature? And who would know about my Quantum Dynamics holdings? I'd been an early seed investor in the company back when it was just 3 programmers in a garage. Those shares had grown into one of my most valuable assets over the past 15 years. Now someone had stolen them with nothing but forged ink on paper. I reached for my phone to call the brokerage, my mind racing through possibilities. This wasn't some random fraud. This was personal. The broker confirmed my worst fears. The transfer request had come from my authorized representative, along with proper identification and notarization. Mr. Preston, according to our records, this was processed through your stepdaughter, Sophia. She provided all the required documentation. Sophia, my late wife's daughter, whom I'd helped raise since she was 12. The brilliant corporate strategist who'd built her career in finance. The woman I'd trusted like my own blood. I never authorized her to act on my behalf, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Sir, she had a notarized power of attorney and your signature on the transfer request. Everything appeared legitimate. I hung up and stared at the paperwork again. The attached identification was clearly Sophia's, but the notary stamp looked suspicious. 20 minutes later, I was in my car, driving to her penthouse downtown. We were going to have a conversation that would change both our lives forever. The traffic gave me time to think about the implications. $8 million was substantial, but the real question was why. Sophia had a successful career and a wealthy fiancé. Why would she risk everything to steal from me, unless she was desperate or being manipulated? Sophia's face went white when she opened her apartment door and saw me holding the transfer documents. Richard, I can explain. You forged my signature to steal $8 million worth of stock. Please, explain that. She stepped aside to let me in, her hands shaking. This wasn't the confident corporate executive I knew. This was a terrified young woman. I didn't want to do it, she whispered, collapsing onto her expensive sofa. But Victor said it was the only way. Victor Kane, her fiancé and CEO of Quantum Dynamics, the company whose stock she'd just stolen. Victor needed the shares to stabilize a liquidity crisis. He said the company would collapse without immediate cash injection, and all the employees would lose their jobs. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke. He said he'd pay you back within 6 months, with interest. I thought I was helping save the company. I sat across from her, studying her body language. Sophia was many things, but she wasn't a practiced liar. Her fear was genuine. Why didn't Victor ask me directly? I'm an original investor. I want the company to succeed. He said you'd never agree to help him. The truth came out slowly, painfully. Victor hadn't just asked Sophia to forge my signature. He'd threatened her. 2 years ago, I made a compliance error on a client report, she admitted. Nothing major, but Victor found out about it. He said if I didn't help him, he'd report it to the SEC and destroy my career. I felt sick. Victor Kane had been blackmailing my stepdaughter for 2 years, and I'd never noticed the signs. Sophia, why didn't you tell me? Because I was ashamed, and because Victor made me believe I deserved it. He said I was lucky to have someone looking out for me, covering for my mistakes. Classic abuser tactics. Isolate the victim. Make them feel grateful for the abuse. He owns my career, Richard. Every promotion, every opportunity, he's been controlling all of it. I can't leave him without losing everything I've worked for. I looked at this brilliant woman who'd been reduced to a scared child by a master manipulator. Victor Kane had turned my stepdaughter into his personal criminal, but he'd made one crucial mistake. He'd stolen from someone who knew how to fight back. Sophia, I need you to listen carefully. I'm going to fix this, but you have to trust me completely. Back home, I reviewed my entire quantum dynamics portfolio with fresh eyes. Most people knew about my Class A shares, but there was something else. Something I'd forgotten about until now. Buried deep in my investment records was a single Class 0 preferred share issued during the company's original funding round. It was worth almost nothing financially, but it carried a unique power that most investors had forgotten existed: the phantom vote. This special share allowed the holder to trigger an emergency shareholder audit of company finances. It was designed as a safeguard against management fraud, included in the original bylaws by nervous early investors. I'd never used it because I'd never needed to. Quantum had always seemed like a well-run company under competent leadership. Now I knew better. I pulled up the company bylaws and read Section 14.7 carefully. The language was clear. If a phantom vote audit revealed financial irregularities, all executive contracts would immediately void, and senior leadership would face personal liability for any losses. Victor Kane was standing on an atomic bomb, and I was holding the detonator. The irony was perfect. He'd stolen my shares to save his company, but I still held the one share that could destroy it completely. The bylaw was even more devastating than I'd initially realized. If the phantom vote triggered an audit and the company failed, the entire executive team would face immediate termination without severance packages. More importantly, they would become personally liable for any shareholder losses caused by financial misrepresentation. Given the liquidity crisis Sophia had mentioned, I suspected Victor's company was built on much shakier ground than its stock price suggested. I called my lawyer to confirm the legal implications. "Richard, this is extraordinary," she said after reviewing the documents. "These bylaws essentially give you the power to force a complete audit of the company's finances. If there are irregularities, the consequences for management would be severe. How long would the audit take? With a phantom vote trigger, the board has to begin within 48 hours. Full results within 2 weeks. Perfect. Victor would barely have time to cover his tracks, assuming there were tracks to cover. I spent the rest of the day researching Quantum's recent financial filings. The numbers looked solid on the surface, but I knew how to read between the lines. Revenue growth was slowing, debt ratios were increasing, and cash flow projections seemed optimistic given market conditions. I filed the phantom audit request with Quantum's legal team the next morning. Their confusion was immediate and entertaining. "Mr. Preston, we've never seen this clause invoked before," the corporate lawyer admitted during our phone call. "Honestly, most of our current board members probably don't even know this provision exists." Well, they're about to learn. Within hours, the audit was officially activated. I received confirmation that an independent accounting firm would begin reviewing Quantum's books immediately. Victor's assistant called me that afternoon, requesting an urgent meeting. I declined politely. Please tell Mr. Kane that I'm unavailable for the next 2 weeks. He'll understand why after he talks to his legal team. By evening, Sophia was calling frantically. Richard, what did you do? Victor is furious. He's saying you've started some kind of investigation that could destroy the company. I exercised my rights as a shareholder, Sophia. Nothing more. But he's saying the audit could uncover 2 irregularities, and that concerns him. Because? The silence on the phone told me everything I needed to know. Victor was worried about the audit because there were things to find. The auditors swarmed Quantum's offices like financial investigators at a crime scene. Within 48 hours, they discovered adjusted vendor invoices, suspicious consulting payments, and revenue recognition that pushed the boundaries of accounting standards. Sophia called me daily with updates, her voice getting more panicked each time. Richard, they're finding problems everywhere. Victor says it's just aggressive accounting practices, but the auditors seem concerned. What kind of problems? Contracts with companies that barely exist, payments to consultants who never delivered services, revenue from deals that haven't actually closed yet. I wasn't surprised. Desperate CEOs often resorted to creative accounting to maintain their stock prices and personal compensation. Sophia, how long has Victor been having liquidity problems? Longer than he admitted. I found emails going back 18 months where he was discussing cash flow issues with the CFO. Victor had been keeping his company afloat through increasingly questionable practices. My stolen shares were probably just the latest attempt to avoid a complete collapse. The audit would expose everything, and Victor's career would be over. But I still needed to protect Sophia from being caught in the fallout. Quantum's stock price began dropping as rumors of the audit spread. I had contacts throughout the financial industry, and I'd been dropping subtle hints about potential accounting irregularities. Professional traders knew how to read signals. When a company faced an emergency audit triggered by a founding investor, smart money moved quickly. Victor tried calling me directly, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails. Richard, we need to talk. This audit is based on misunderstandings about our accounting practices. I can explain everything if you'll give me the chance. I didn't return his calls. Instead, I contacted my old trading network, quiet titans who moved markets with whispered conversations. Quantum's books won't pass the quarter, I mentioned casually during a lunch with former colleagues. Within days, short positions against Quantum Dynamics increased dramatically. The stock price dropped another 15%. Victor was learning that attacking my family had consequences beyond his imagination. I wasn't just going after his company. I was systematically destroying his reputation in the financial community. The pressure would either force him to confess his crimes or make increasingly desperate moves that would expose him further. Victor launched a public relations campaign, trying to control the narrative. He appeared on financial news shows, calling the audit routine and suggesting I was confused about modern accounting practices. He even hinted that I might be suffering from age-related cognitive decline. I watched his performances with amusement. Victor was a smooth talker, but he was also panicking. His media appearances were too polished, too rehearsed. He was overcompensating. The real tell was his body language when reporters asked specific questions about cash flow. His jaw tensed, his shoulders stiffened, and his answers became vague. Sophia noticed it too. He's been different lately, she told me during one of our calls. Angry, paranoid. He accused me of leaking information to the auditors. Are you? No. But Richard, I'm scared. He threw his phone against the wall yesterday when I asked about the audit results. Victor was showing his true nature under pressure. The charming CEO mask was slipping, revealing the predator underneath. Sophia, I need you to be very careful around him. If he's capable of blackmail and fraud, he might be capable of worse. I know. I've been staying at hotels most nights, making excuses about work travel. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Victor's former assistant, apparently disgusted by what she'd witnessed, sent me a package of internal documents, a private spreadsheet hidden in Victor's personal files showed his real financial projections for quantum dynamics. The company was headed for bankruptcy within 6 months, regardless of any stock transfers or cash injections. More damning, the spreadsheet showed Victor's exit strategy. He planned to cash out his personal holdings before the collapse and blame the company's failure on market conditions and accounting irregularities discovered during a hostile audit. Sophia was listed as the primary scapegoat. Victor had been planning to throw her under the bus all along, using her forged signature as evidence that she'd been manipulating financial documents without his knowledge. I felt rage unlike anything I'd experienced in decades. Victor hadn't just been stealing money. He'd been planning to destroy my stepdaughter's life to cover his own crimes. This stopped being about $8 million in stock. This was about protecting my family from a sociopathic predator. I called my lawyer immediately. I need you to prepare additional documentation for the audit team. Sophia arrived at my house the next evening, visibly shaken. Her engagement ring was missing, and she had dark circles under her eyes. I broke it off with Victor, she said without preamble. I can't marry him, Richard. Not after what I've learned. What changed your mind? He tried to convince me to flee the country with him. Said we could start over somewhere without extradition treaties. I felt cold satisfaction. Victor was showing his true desperation now. He also gave me a document to sign. A statement saying that I acted alone in transferring your shares, without his knowledge or approval. You didn't sign it? No. But he said if I refused, he'd make sure the SEC investigation focused entirely on me. He'd claim I've been embezzling from clients for years. Victor was accelerating his timeline, probably because the audit was uncovering worse problems than I'd anticipated. Sophia, I need you to know something. I have evidence that Victor planned to betray you from the beginning. You were never his partner. You were always his scapegoat. I showed her the financial projections and exit strategy I'd received. Her face went through anger, disbelief, and finally, cold determination. He's been planning this for months, years. You were just a useful tool for his crimes. The quantum board meeting was scheduled for Friday morning. The audit results would be presented, and Victor would finally face accountability for his actions. I arrived early, taking a seat in the back of the boardroom. As a major original shareholder, I had the right to observe proceedings. Victor entered confidently, still playing the role of the wronged CEO. He nodded to me politely, as if we were simply having a business disagreement. Richard, I hope we can put this misunderstanding behind us soon. I smiled without warmth. I'm sure we will, Victor. The lead auditor began her presentation with devastating efficiency. Quantum dynamics had been systematically inflating revenue, hiding debt through shell companies, and misrepresenting cash flow to investors. The company was technically bankrupt. Its stock price was based on fraudulent financial statements. Board members began asking increasingly hostile questions. Victor's answers grew more desperate and contradictory. Then came the final blow. The auditor presented evidence of the forged stock transfer, including Victor's instructions to Sophia and his threats about her career. The room erupted. Victor was immediately suspended, pending criminal investigation. But I wasn't finished yet. I stood slowly, leaning on my walking cane for dramatic effect. I'd like to invoke Section 14.7 of the corporate bylaws, I announced. I'm calling for a mandatory shareholder vote on corporate dissolution due to the failed audit. The room went silent. Half the board members looked confused. They'd never heard of Section 14.7. The corporate lawyer quickly pulled up the bylaws on his laptop. His face went pale as he read. The bylaw is valid, he announced. Mr. Preston holds a Class 0 preferred share, which grants him this authority. Victor finally understood what was happening. His face twisted with rage and desperation. You can't do this. This is corporate sabotage. This is corporate governance, I replied calmly. You stole from shareholders and defrauded investors. The bylaws provide a remedy for exactly this situation. The vote would be held within 48 hours, per the bylaw requirements. Given the audit results, I was confident about the outcome. Victor's empire was about to collapse, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. But the real justice would come when the criminal investigations began. The shareholder vote was a formality. Faced with evidence of massive fraud and potential criminal liability, shareholders voted overwhelmingly to dissolve Quantum Dynamics under controlled bankruptcy. Victor's personal assets would be frozen pending criminal investigation. His reputation in the tech industry was permanently destroyed. The SEC and FBI were already building cases for securities fraud, investor deception, and conspiracy charges. Sophia testified willingly, providing evidence of Victor's blackmail and threats. The prosecutors were confident they could prove she acted under duress. "Thank you for protecting me," she said during one of our meetings with law enforcement. "I should have told you about Victor's threats years ago." "You were being manipulated by an expert," I replied. "The important thing is that you found the courage to do the right thing when it mattered." The financial media covered the story extensively. Victor Kane became a cautionary tale about corporate fraud and abuse of power. But the most satisfying moment came when Victor was arrested at the airport, apparently trying to flee to a non-extradition country. His mugshot made the front page of every business publication in the country. 6 months later, I sat in the federal courthouse watching Victor Kane receive his sentence. 12 years in federal prison for securities fraud, conspiracy, and theft. Sophia sat beside me, no longer the scared woman who'd confessed to forgery in her apartment. She'd found her strength again, testifying courageously against her former abuser. The judge's words were particularly satisfying. "Mr. Kane, you used your position of trust to systematically defraud investors and psychologically abuse a vulnerable victim. Your actions represent the worst kind of white-collar crime." Victor looked smaller in his orange jumpsuit, no longer the confident CEO who'd tried to destroy my family. "Do you have anything to say to the victims, Mr. Kane?" the judge asked. Victor mumbled something that might have been an apology, but his eyes were full of anger rather than remorse. As we left the courthouse, Sophia linked her arm through mine. "I have something to tell you," she said. "I've been offered a position with the SEC's Enforcement Division. They want me to help investigate corporate fraud cases." I smiled. Victor's attempts to destroy her career had instead given her a new purpose. "That's perfect. You'll be protecting other victims from predators like him." 1 year later, Sophia and I opened the Preston Foundation for Corporate Whistleblowers. Using the money recovered from Victor's assets, we created a fund to protect and support people who exposed corporate fraud. Sophia ran the day-to-day operations, while I provided strategic guidance and financial oversight. "Our first case is interesting," she told me during our weekly planning meeting. "A pharmaceutical company that's been hiding safety data about a new drug." "What's the whistleblower's situation?" "Young scientist who discovered the cover-up. She's being threatened with career destruction if she goes public." It sounded familiar. Corporate predators use the same tactics repeatedly: isolation, threats, and manipulation. "Set up a meeting," I said. "Let's see how we can help her." The foundation quickly gained a reputation for taking on powerful corporate interests. Sophia's experience as a victim made her particularly effective at helping other whistleblowers find their courage. We'd turned Victor's crimes into something positive, protecting future victims from similar abuse. But the most important victory was personal. Sophia had reclaimed her life and found her true calling. The pharmaceutical case led to congressional hearings and major reforms in drug safety reporting. Our foundation's support allowed the scientists to testify without fear of retaliation. Other cases followed: defense contractors hiding safety defects, financial firms manipulating client accounts, tech companies covering up data breaches. Each victory reinforced the same lesson Victor had learned too late: attacking innocent people has consequences, especially when those people have allies willing to fight back. "Richard, we've received over 200 requests for help this year," Sophia reported during our annual review. "Corporate fraud is more widespread than most people realize, but fewer criminals are getting away with it, thanks to you. If you hadn't fought back against Victor, I'd probably be in prison right now, and he'd still be stealing from investors." I thought about the path that had brought us here. One forged signature had started a chain of events that exposed massive fraud and created a new weapon against corporate crime. Sophia, the real credit belongs to you. You found the courage to tell the truth when it mattered most. We made a good team. We still do. 2 years after Victor's conviction, I received an unexpected letter. It was from him, written in federal prison. He apologized for his crimes and asked for my forgiveness. The letter seemed genuine, though I suspected it was partly motivated by hopes for early parole consideration. I showed it to Sophia, curious about her reaction. "What do you think?" I asked. "I think he's finally learned that actions have consequences. But I also think he's primarily sorry he got caught. Are you interested in visiting him?" Sophia was quiet for a long moment. "No, I've moved beyond what he did to me. Seeing him now would just be looking backward." She was right. Victor Kane was part of our past, but the foundation was our future. We'd created something lasting and meaningful from the wreckage of his crimes. Dozens of other victims had been protected because of our work. Besides, Sophia continued, I'd rather spend my time helping new whistleblowers than revisiting old wounds. I felt proud of the woman she'd become. Victor's attempts to break her spirit had ultimately made her stronger and more determined to fight for justice. The Foundation's 3rd annual gala was our largest yet. Whistleblowers, prosecutors, journalists, and reform advocates gathered to celebrate our victories and plan future campaigns. I gave the opening remarks, reflecting on our mission and accomplishments. 3 years ago, my stepdaughter was forced to commit a crime by a man who used fear and manipulation to control her, I began. Today, she leads one of the most effective corporate accountability organizations in the country. I looked at Sophia, who was sitting at the head table with other Foundation leaders. Our work proves that criminals can be stopped, victims can be empowered, and truth can triumph over deception, but only when good people have the courage to fight back. The applause was enthusiastic, but the real satisfaction came from knowing we'd protected hundreds of potential victims from corporate predators. After the dinner, Sophia and I walked through the hotel gardens, discussing plans for expanding our international operations. Victor created something he never intended, she observed. His crimes became the foundation for protecting other people from men like him. Poetic justice. I agreed. The best kind. 5 years after the quantum dynamics scandal, I decided to step back from active leadership of the Foundation. At 78, I wanted to focus on strategic guidance rather than daily operations. Sophia had more than proven her ability to run the organization. Under her leadership, the Foundation had become a major force in corporate accountability. "Are you sure you're ready to retire?" she asked during our transition planning. "I'm ready to let you take full control. You don't need me looking over your shoulder anymore." The Foundation's success had exceeded my wildest expectations. We'd helped expose fraud at dozens of major corporations, protected hundreds of whistleblowers, and influenced policy reforms that strengthened corporate oversight. More importantly, we'd created a model that other organizations were copying worldwide. What will you do with your time? Write memoirs, travel, enjoy watching my stepdaughter change the world. Sophia laughed. No pressure there. You've already changed mine. The federal prosecutor who'd handled Victor's case invited me to speak at a conference on white-collar crime prevention. The quantum dynamics case has become a textbook example of how to investigate and prosecute corporate fraud, she told the audience. But the real lesson is about the power of strategic patience. She described how my methodical approach had been more effective than emotional confrontation. Mr. Preston could have simply reported the forged signature and pursued criminal charges immediately. Instead, he used his business expertise to expose the entire criminal enterprise. During the question period, a young prosecutor asked about my motivation. "Was this about recovering your stolen money?" "No," I replied. "The money was secondary. This was about protecting my family from a predator and ensuring he couldn't victimize anyone else." "How did you know the audit would reveal broader fraud?" "I didn't know for certain, but desperate CEOs usually have multiple secrets to hide. The audit was designed to find whatever Victor was concealing. The strategy had worked perfectly. Victor's attempt to steal $8 million had led to his downfall and the exposure of much larger crimes. On the 10th anniversary of Victor's conviction, Sophia and I visited the federal prison where he was serving his sentence. We didn't meet with him. We were there to speak with other inmates about corporate accountability and the consequences of white-collar crime. Many of you believed your victims were just numbers on financial statements, Sophia told the group. But every fraud has real people behind it. Families who lose their savings, employees who lose their jobs, communities that lose their futures. Her presentation was powerful and personal. She spoke about her own experience as both a victim and an inadvertent accomplice. I learned that good intentions don't excuse criminal actions, but I also learned that people can change, grow, and find redemption through service to others. After the presentation, several inmates approached us with questions about making amends for their crimes. One man, convicted of embezzling from a charity, asked about volunteering for victim support organizations after his release. "The foundation you created," he said to me, "it gives people like us hope that we can do something positive with our experiences." Sophia's wedding took place in a small ceremony at my home. She'd met her husband through foundation work. He was a prosecutor who specialized in corporate crime. Walking her down the aisle, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. Victor's crimes had nearly destroyed her life, but they'd ultimately led her to her true calling and genuine love. "Thank you," she whispered as we reached the altar, "for everything. Thank you for trusting me when it mattered most." The ceremony was simple but meaningful. The guests included whistleblowers, prosecutors, journalists, and reform advocates, people who'd chosen truth over comfort, justice over convenience. During the reception, Sophia's new husband pulled me aside. "I want you to know that what you and Sophia built together has changed how we prosecute white-collar crime. The foundation's support makes victims more willing to come forward. That was always the goal. Victor Kane probably never imagined that stealing your stock would lead to this." I smiled. I doubt Victor imagined much beyond his own immediate gratification. His loss was everyone else's gain. 15 years later, I sat in my study reviewing the Foundation's annual report. Under Sophia's leadership, the organization had grown into an international force for corporate accountability. The numbers were impressive. Over 2,000 whistleblowers protected, hundreds of fraud cases exposed, billions in stolen money recovered for victims. But the real success was measured in trust restored and justice served. Sophia visited me weekly, often bringing her children, my step-grandchildren who called me Papa Preston, and loved hearing stories about fighting the bad guys. "Tell us about the phantom vote again," 8-year-old Michael requested during one visit. "Well, sometimes when bad people think they've won, they discover that good people have secret weapons they never knew about. Like superheroes? Exactly like superheroes. Your mother is one of them," Sophia laughed. "Papa Preston, you're the one who taught me how to fight back. I just showed you that you already had the strength. You chose to use it." Victor Kane was scheduled for release next year after serving 14 years of his sentence. I'd heard he planned to write a book about corporate culture and redemption. I wished him well, but I no longer thought about him often. His crimes had become the foundation for something much larger and more important than his punishment. Looking at my stepdaughter and her children, I felt complete satisfaction. Family wasn't just about blood relationships. It was about choosing to protect and support each other through difficult times. Victor had tried to destroy that bond, but he'd only made it stronger. The phantom vote had been my secret weapon. But love and loyalty were the forces that had truly won the war. If Ray's corporate revenge satisfied you, tomorrow's story will leave you speechless. Meet the grandfather whose son-in-law said he was too old to drive, so he drove his new sports car straight through the man's prized rose garden. Tomorrow's story: my SONINLAW said I too was too old to drive, so I drove my new sports car through his prized rose garden. What happened next proves that age is just a number, and sometimes the best response to disrespect is horsepower and precision driving. Subscribe and hit that bell because tomorrow's generational revenge will leave you cheering. See you at Betrayal HQ.